Even if you don't know a yellow card from a red card, you'll want to listen to my guest this week on Brio TV, the podcast, author, TV critic, and beautiful game expert, John Doyle. Well, here we are in the middle of the FIFA World Cup, so time to speak with somebody who really knows soccer. That's my TV columnist pal, John Doyle. For close to 25 years, John kept his readers at the Globe and Mail well informed and entertained on the subject of television. He retired in 2022, but he's been lured back in front of his laptop by Globe and Mail rival, the Toronto Star. Some smart editor there must have read John's lively bestseller, The World is a Ball, The Joy, Madness, and Meaning of Soccer. They've put him to work covering the 2026 World Cup, and readers are having a ball with John in vintage form. We spoke over Zoom on June 25th, with Canada coming off a close loss to Switzerland. Me and John kicked the soccer ball around and working some general TV banter, and we got so into it, in fact, that I've split the conversation into 2 episodes, with the focus on soccer in episode 1 and mainly on television in episode 2, with plenty of back and forth in both episodes. So here he is, John Doyle, with the opening kick. It's great to see you. How are you?
And you.
Yeah. I think it's fantastic to open the Toronto Star and see your picture there. It's wonderful, John. It's kind of fun. Did you ever imagine you'd be filing on soccer for the other guys?
No, I didn't. But with the World Cup coming to my neighborhood and me having covered World Cups, 4 World Cups, 3 Euro tournaments, and soccer from 17 countries on 4 different continents, it seemed it seemed a mistake to just ignore it when it was down the street from me, and I can hear the roar of the crowd from the stadium in my backyard.
Yeah.
So I was talking to excuse me, the Star about something else, and they said, are you doing any freelancing? Do you want to do anything? So the only thing I wanted to do was the World Cup. So yeah. They took me out, they bought me some Guinness, and next thing you know, I agreed to write a small batch of columns for the World Cup. It's just every weekend for 6 weeks, I file my take on what's going on in the World Cup to the Star. I didn't even think of going to the Globe. It was the Star I was already dealing with, and they seemed anxious to have me on board. And so far, I think the columns are doing well for the Star, and they appreciate it.
Oh, I bet they are. You're there. You are above the fold in the front section. I love the moment it all started to matter, that column on the big victory against Qatar there. It does my heart good to see you there. It looked kind of, and it was just so fun to read, man. There you are. You haven't that same voice, It was cheeky and observant, and lots of stuff there about the done right in.
Yes, which I have brought you
yes.
here too.
Yeah,
it's my local, and yes, it's a fun dive bar. Nothing fancy, but when I do those pieces like that, I learned over the years that sometimes the best way to cover something is to go to the place, sit very quietly in the corner, and watch and listen.
Yeah.
Well, that's all you have to do.
You do that well. You've even, one of the patrons there shared the fact that he got new contact lenses for the World Cup. You can't make that up, right?
No, you can't. No. It's just, and that's the material you get if you sit in the corner quietly, the notebook, and sit and listen, jot a few things down, and then at the end of it, you have a narrative.
Yeah, you sure
The
do.
story of what happened.
Yeah, it was it's great fun to read. And you're right. You can literally walk to BMO Field, whatever they're calling it during the World Cup, and so you can tell Toronto has World Cup fever. Is that your impression?
It does. Certainly in this part of town, it's very obvious. Yes, I can walk to what's called temporarily called Toronto Stadium. I have done that journey countless times. I could walk to the stadium in 20 minutes, uh, and I've been there enough times to know exactly what it's like. I do not have official FIFA accreditation for the tournament, so I'm not getting press tickets to go to the games, but I don't think I need to. I think the fun, the flavor of a World Cup is in the area. It's in the restaurants, bars, the street. It's on the
Yeah.
streetcar. It's on the train. I mean, it's a big public event. And besides, if you're in the stadium covering the game, doing a game report, there are about 300 people trying to write off the exact same event. And, and it's difficult to be original doing that.
Yes.
But if you're out and about and you keep your eyes and ears open, I mean, that's really what the World Cup is about. I think the tournament has probably had a bit less impact on the city than might have been anticipated. I think there probably are fewer foreign guests, supporters of different teams playing in Toronto.
Italy.
Italy,
Wow,
yes. Well,
that's a big loss right there, right, for Toronto.
well, I mean, that's nostalgia, Bill.
Yeah, I guess so.
Italy did not qualify for the last two World Cups, and the two World Cups before that, when Italy did qualify, they crashed out in the first round.
Yeah.
The history of Italian soccer in the last 20 years is really one of decline. It is not the soccer power it was. And when I think, Italian Canadians in and around Toronto think of Italy and soccer, football, it's about nostalgia now. It's not about the current reality.
I get that, but I remember when I first moved to Brampton, I would get my car fixed at Johnny's in Brampton there, and when Italy, what was it, 1988? When did they last win? 92 or 88? Whenever that was.
In there, it's a long time ago.
Yeah, he had a bunch of broken down cars, so he painted them green and white and red and drove around with flags, and this went on for about 3.5 years. So I do remember it was a big deal back then. But do you think, John, my son-in-law Mo is Egyptian, and I was recently in Cairo for a wedding there.
So you were,
yeah, it was pretty cool. And that his generation, people in their 30s, they're having the parties, they're watching the games, they are so into it. It seems like that game in a city like Toronto, which is very multicultural, it happening here more than anywhere in some ways, right?
Yes. Egypt, of course, is at this World Cup. Strong team. This is probably the last runaround for Mohamed Salah, one of the greatest soccer players ever. A legend in Egypt and in England, where I think Mo Salah's shoes are in the Victoria and Albert Museum because he twice was the leading scorer in English football.
Does he play for Liverpool, John?
Yes, he did. He's probably on his way out of Liverpool now, towards the end of his career, and he's had a falling out with the coach at Liverpool, who then after that was essentially fired. So exactly what's going to happen next for Mo Salah is hard to tell, but a vitally important player in the Muslim world and in the Premier League in England. So yes, it matters a great deal to different generations. This World Cup is 48 teams. It's an expanded World Cup. So it can't be about the old powers of international soccer. That is um, Germany, France, Italy, England. Things have moved beyond that. There are some small teams, small countries at this World Cup, which makes it fascinating because if you enjoy the game at all, there's as much fun in watching a tiny country like Curacao or Cape Verde play against the bigger countries. There's much pleasure in that as there is in watching Lionel Messi, break another record game after game.
Yeah. It's I love the Scots though. Scotland's here.
Oh yes.
And basically they've got songs where they're singing, we're not going to win, but
yes.
no Scotland, no party, right?
The Scots are adorable. Yeah, they are. Not always their style of playing soccer. It tends to be a bit journeyman. But yeah, I've seen the Scots over the years covering international soccer, and there are a few more impressive sights in the world than the Tartan Army on the march. They're in their thousands, sometimes tens of thousands, all of them in kilts, men, women, children, led by bagpipers.
Wow.
And they are there, and they have so many songs. I mean, if you're in a stadium, a huge stadium of 75,000 people, and the game is underway, and thousands of Scots are there to support their team. If there was a lull in the game, the Scots start singing, and they might start singing Loch Lomond. If you take the high road, I'll take the low road, and I'll be in Scotland before you.
Right.
And it's gorgeous. I mean, communal singing like that has a power that transcends the game, and it is a lot more enjoyable than "Go Leafs Go," "Go Jays Go"
from a bunch of corporate wanks in the seats. I mean, it's sort of a bit like in Montreal with the Canadians. I've sat in the Forum in the old days and watched games, and the singing in the upper seats would be very moving, right?
It is, yes, and communal singing is, and it's in our nature. It's in our DNA. That communal singing together, which we rarely do. Yeah. We rarely get a chance to do. People at church do. Yeah. You can join a choir and be part of it, and one of the reasons people join a choir is because of the emotional high you get from communal singing.
Yeah, no, it's like Canadians recently were moved when Buffalo Sabre fans started singing the Canadian national anthem. Yeah. That was kind of cool. We'll be right back with John Doyle after this short message. Hey kids, time once again to check in with Emily Gagne at Hollywood Suite. Emily, what do you got for us this month?
Well, Bill, it's Pride Month, so we've got some great queer films from yesterday to today, including one of my personal favorites, Brokeback Mountain. We also have But I'm a Cheerleader. We also have Velvet Goldmine. And we have Dog Day Afternoon, which I think people forget is a queer film.
Great film with Al Pacino for sure. And look, that's all good. That's it. Look, those are great films. This has to be expensive. It must. I don't know if I can afford. How much does it cost to see this?
Well, we're around $6 a month wherever you subscribe, Bill.
$6. I paid that to see Dog Day Afternoon in 1974. That's pretty good. Yeah,
you're getting these movies that I mentioned plus hundreds more for the price of a movie ticket in what it was, 1975.
75. Well, there you go. Thank you, Emily, for that report. We'll talk to you again next month.
Thanks, Bill.
And here he is again, John Doyle. Are you shocked at the numbers? We're seeing great ratings. I mean, TSN claims they had an average minute audience of 5.2 million for Canada versus Qatar, and it peaked at 8 million. I mean, that's more than twice the Stanley Cup final numbers this year, although two American teams in the final, but even higher than any Stanley Cup game, any of the Canadiens game or, Edmonton. So that seems to be a turning point, John.
I'm not surprised. No, I think while soccer is not the number one sport in Canada and never will be, there was a heft, there was a movement behind this World Cup because we were co-hosting and because there were high hopes for Canada as a co-host country and with some very good players. And the background drama of Alphonso Davies, our best player, being injured and the tension surrounding when he would come back, there was enormous interest in this game, in soccer as a game in Canada. One thing I think we shouldn't forget is that it's the women's soccer that laid the groundwork for all of this.
Yeah.
Before Canada was the Canadian men were a top 30 in the world ranking. Canadian women were at World Cups. They were winning games. They won the gold medal at the Olympics. Christine Sinclair is one of the greatest international players ever in both men's and women's. And the Canadian women's team was in World Cups and in hard-fought epic battles with other teams long before the Canadian men were doing this.
Yeah, it was nice to see Sinclair, so prominent at that game. Canada won 6-0. Yeah, I mean, now you mentioned the men's in the top 30. They're barely really ranked there, I think.
Yeah.
And they played Switzerland in the next game and lost 2-1. Did that surprise you, or is that about right, do you think?
I think it's about right. Switzerland would be the toughest opposition that the Canadian men have faced in some time, not just at this World Cup, but in the preparations in the year leading up to the World Cup, when they play preparation games, friendly games, in order to prepare for the World Cup. Switzerland is tough. They have always been a very tough team to beat. This generation of Swiss players is a good mixture of veterans who have loads of experience on the international stage, are not intimidated by being at a World Cup, and they have a couple of very good young players who are very fast, very swift on the ball. And I think as an observer, I would have thought a 2-2 draw was possible. As a supporter of Canada, I would have hoped for a 2-1 victory for Canada, but a 2-1 victory for Switzerland was an honest result in the end. Canada were overwhelmed at the start of the second half. They were taken apart. Their defense seemed to evaporate. That, in part, I think, comes down to the selection of players that were used at the beginning of the game. I think Jesse Marsch may have underestimated just how tough this Swiss would be. It's a pity that it means Canada now has to leave Vancouver and go play in the States. But that's the nature of the game. It's tough. You don't get any breaks.
No, for sure. And we're talking on June 25th here. So Canada's got a game with South Africa next, I believe.
Yes.
And that'll be in the States. Do you have any, what is your forecast for that nation? They a tough team?
I don't think they're as tough as the Swiss, to be honest. Okay. South Africa has struggled at the beginning of this World Cup. They played in the opening game against Mexico in Mexico City, and they looked a bit feeble at that point. They have, I think, grown into the tournament a bit, but I would hope that for Canada, South Africa is eminently beatable. This is a team that you need to smother their attack, and you need to to keep trying to score goals against them. You need to try to get 2-3 goals as fast as possible, and then hold the game. I also think South Africa is probably happy with making it to this round after a pretty terrible beginning at the World Cup. So they will be satisfied with, their hearts will not be broken if they're beaten by Canada and go home. They made it to the knockout round, which is an achievement for them.
And who else has impressed you so far among the nations?
I was impressed by Japan. I think Japan is fascinating to watch. The technique, the tactical strategies of Japan are fascinating because they don't have tall players, and they're often playing against teams that have tall defenders. So if you're looking at the very basics of soccer, you have to find a way around the sheer size and bulk of the team you're playing against. Japan has figured that out with a very fast passing technique, keeping the ball on the ground. The player with the ball always having 2 options to pass the ball to, so that creates a triangle. That means that Japan is playing a series of triangles, hoping to get the ball as close to the net as possible, rather than shooting the ball, lifting the ball in from the side into the penalty area and relying on tall strikers to head the ball. That's not going to work for them. So they come up with something different. They're fascinating to watch. The Netherlands seem to be better than they often are. Argentina, of course. Argentina and France are the 2 top teams in this World Cup. France, I think, has an edge over Argentina in that it has a very skilled, very fast set of younger players, strikers. Mbappe is the embodiment of the sophistication of French soccer. And, I suspect by the end of this World Cup, Mbappe will overshadow Messi in terms of his status as a great goal scorer.
Wow. Okay. We heard from Ronaldo. I mean, a couple of goals. That was
dear God.
The Gordie Howe of soccer.
I'm actually today, as we speak, I'm working on my next column for the Toronto Star for the weekend, and the theme of it is this isn't Messi's or Ronaldo's World Cup. It is ours. Right. It belongs to the people. It belongs to the fans. I think there is too much emphasis on a superstar like Messi and on a superstar like Cristiano Ronaldo. The emphasis on them, it diminishes the whole tournament a bit, because I think it's particularly true of mainstream news, news services that don't, and people in covering the news who don't have a lot of experience with soccer. And in North America, that's pretty common. So there's a tendency to look not at the tournament as a whole, but at the superstars. And that, I think there's a point where that's becomes lame. There's far more to the World Cup than, Lionel Messi scoring his 18th goal and then his 19th goal. And at the beginning of the World Cup, that can be against inferior opposition.
Sure.
So it's not the huge deal that some media outlets make it to be.
Right.
It's much better, I think, to just sit back and watch the tournament. Look at the minnows. Look at the underdog teams. I think as Canadians, we tend to fall for and support underdogs, because we're a kind of underdog country in many ways. And I think that should be our drift as the World Cup goes on, should be towards the smaller teams, the minnows, the ones who are not famous. And, Messi and Ronaldo, they already get all the attention they need.
Yeah, for sure. I've been fortunate to travel a bit, and I've been to Buenos Aires and seen all the jerseys and the uniforms in store windows there, just how, the fandom is intense and widespread. And then, as I mentioned, it was in Egypt in April. And my son, I was there with Dan and his girlfriend Rosie, and we were going toward this monument in the middle there of Cairo. And that's where they have all their soccer fields, their practice fields and everything. And the team was coming out as we were going in, and traffic was stopped and people were staring. And it was fascinating to see just the rock star status this team had there. It was really cool. So that's for me, the big lesson about this sport is how completely worldwide it is and universal. And there's nothing like that with football, NFL or baseball or hockey, right? It's unique to soccer.
That's a shrewd remark, Bill. And I think some of the scenes out of this World Cup have emphasized how different soccer is. If you look at the Canadian men's team playing at this World Cup, it looks like Canada. It looks like, it looks like us. It is, one of the cliches about a national soccer team is that it is the nation made flesh. And often it is. So, yes, the men's team and the women's teaming for Canada look like Canada. They look very different from the men's or women's hockey team in terms of representing the country.
Right.
Before the game in Vancouver the other day, the Qatar game, it's in the stadium in BC that holds about just over 50,000 people. There were probably 48,000 Canadians there and 2,000 millionaire Qataris. But the way that the Canadian supporters, the official supporters club, the Voyageurs, prepared for that game was kind of magnificent. I mean, they had a giant march through downtown Vancouver to the stadium. There's probably 10 to 14,000 people in their red shirts waving flags, some red flares. And for the last mile or so to the stadium, at the front, you had the Mounties in their red serge uniforms leading the march to the stadium. It was deeply impressive as a public event and as an expression of a country's interest in the game and this tournament. And it was an event you would never see that at a big hockey game. Stanley Cup finals, at a big baseball game in Canada. You never see that kind of public display of a country, a nation on the march.
Well, especially in contrast with like the Super Bowl and American culture, like it's very red, white, and blue, waving one flag. It's almost the opposite. To have the Mounties bringing in another team or our team, it's that is very different, I think. And I was reading too, people were saying before the tournament started, and a lot of people, we can get into FIFA in a minute, but we're sort of saying, the tickets aren't selling, they're so expensive, I'm already bored, I don't want, I'm not going to watch this. And you commented that, as soon as it starts, all that goes away. You've seen this before, almost every 4 years, right?
Yes. Yes, the pattern played out at this World Cup, being co-hosted by Canada. Just before the tournament starts, there was always a lot of complaining. There was peak paranoia. Yeah. Just before the tournament opens, there is a big hatred of FIFA because of FIFA regulations about this, that, and the other. This time, a lot of anger about the price of tickets, how it was inaccessible. Tickets were often inaccessible to the ordinary person, and the prices for tickets for some games were just outrageously big. And then locally, there's always this anger about the imposition of roads closed, restricted transit, because every few days, 50,000 people need to go safely to a stadium and get out of it safely. And they're expected to go have a good time in the neighborhood. Even in my neighborhood, because I live close to BMO Field, now called Toronto Stadium, for a while. And there was a lot of anger. I could tell among some people in the neighborhood. They didn't want to deal with the roads being closed on certain days. And they complained, oh, I want to get my kid to their ballet lesson or whatever. What am I supposed to do? Well, you're in a city that is co-hosting the biggest sporting event in the world. Billions around the world are paying attention. Just ride with it.
You think people would be, in Toronto, traffic is paralyzed when there's nothing going on. It's not like this is, when did this happen? It's interesting to see that reaction for sure, but certainly it's pretty cool to host something like this, to be a host country for the World Cup. Don't go away. We'll head into Extra Time next with John Doyle.
And even if we don't win, we will win, we will win. We'll boogie on in Berlin, and Berlin, and Berlin. No Scotland, no party. Steve Clark's
What's new this summer on Paramount Plus Canada? Well, get set to be all shook up by epic Elvis Presley in concert, which will make its streaming debut July 24th exclusively on Paramount Plus in Canada. The film is already running on Paramount Plus in the U.S. From director Baz Luhrmann, this film invites audiences to experience Elvis Presley like never before, featuring long-lost footage from his legendary Las Vegas residency in the 1970s, alongside rare 16mm footage from Elvis on tour and treasured 8mm film from the Graceland archive. This footage was restored by Peter Jackson, who worked miracles bringing the Beatles' Let It Be footage back to life for Get Back. Epic has also garnered widespread critical acclaim, with Vogue calling it, quote, a burst of concert film adrenaline, and Time praising its profoundly intimate approach. Check it out this summer exclusively on Paramount Plus. And we're back. Now, in terms of, soccer's, we traded a few questions before we spoke here. And one of the notes you sent me was, why did soccer never catch on in Canada? So I have a theory, but I wanted to hear yours since you posed this question.
I asked that question and I suggested that question to Bill in a kind of ironic way. When my book about soccer, The World as a Ball, came out quite a few years ago now, it was time for the World Cup. And it was an almost immediate bestseller. It was on the top 10 best-selling books in Canada within a couple of weeks of coming out. And the publisher sent me on a promotional tour. Of course, Toronto, Montreal, a couple of cities out west in Vancouver. And I was on these radio shows several times where the first question from the DJ or news guy was, so, John, why did soccer never catch on in Canada? And I would have to say, well, I think it has. This book I'm promoting is on the bestseller list. But the real answer, of course, is deeper than that. It has caught on. It's just a reality that soccer will never be the number one sport in Canada. Hockey is part of our DNA. It defines us. It defines us in cultural and meaningful ways that soccer will never reach. I think soccer can happily progress as the third or fourth sport in Canada. And the makeup of Canada as a vastly multicultural country means that there will always be an interest from people whose home countries, whether they came from it or their parents or grandparents came from it, they come from a soccer culture. So there will always be a momentum behind soccer in Canada. It's just realistic to say it will never replace hockey.
Well, as someone who spent 30 years living in Brampton, raising two kids and who both played soccer, I can tell you, I mean, it may not be number one, but in generationally, in terms of younger Canadians, it's up there. I mean, for a family to try to put a kid through hockey, it costs a fortune. The skates and all the equipment, padding, rink time. Soccer, you just need the boots and the uniform, and away you go. And Katie and Dan, they played for coaches who were Russian and Turkish and, like an international group of people who got invested in the game and were coaching kids, in that community. And boy, it as a dad, as a parent watching, it was exciting and fun, So I do think that as time goes on, there'll be less and less people who will be asking, why did soccer never catch on in Canada? I think
yes.
The
Brampton connection is fascinating, and it is now established. I don't want to flatter myself, but I think I was probably the first person to write about the connection with Brampton. This goes back quite a few years now, when the Canadian men's team was attempting to qualify for the last World Cup, the one that was in Qatar. I was either at some of those games in Toronto or I saw them on TV. Mm-hmm. And during that journey, it was about 65, 70 minutes into the match, and that's when substitutions are usually made. And I was watching on TV, and a sub came on, and it was mentioned, Brampton native, so-and-so. And I paused for a minute, and I went through the players on the field, and at that point, there were 11 players on the field. At that point, 6 of them were from Brampton.
Wow.
I figured, okay, this has meaning.
Yeah.
So I wrote about it, and, I wrote a column saying, this Canada team is going to the World Cup because of 2 things. That is the coach at the time, John Herdman, as a leader, and because of the city of Brampton. And it got tremendous reaction from Brampton and from politicians there and coaches there. But it is true that, Brampton is a microcosm of Canada, and it is the engine of the men's soccer team.
And it's also a city of 700,000 people. It's a big place. And if the guy who was the big hero there for years and years was Russell Peters, the comedian.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And, a lot of kids would find inspiration in that. He came from that high school where he had pizza here, or there's his picture in the tire shop, And now it's the soccer players who have stepped in and they're the heroes to inspire another generation. So it makes a big difference, I think, to have those role models, right?
It does, and they're ordinary people. These are, they're playing on the world stage for Canada. They're at a World Cup, but they come from Brampton, from humble beginnings. I mean, I've spoken to Jonathan Osorio, who is sometimes the captain of the Canada men's team and plays, of course, for Toronto FC. Osorio is from Brampton, background being from Colombia. And, his personal story is that, he wanted to play soccer, from his early teens. There were some injuries and setbacks, and he figured he might end up working for his dad, who ran like a contracting company. Mm-hmm. He'd be out doing painting and decorating and pulling out the ladder from the truck. And, but that was life for his family. Mm-hmm. And he transcended that to become a star player for Toronto FC in Canada. And, he didn't shoot into the galaxy as a superstar, but he's a very good player. He's paid very well. And as a model to younger Canadians, I think, he's ideal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, it's really cool to watch and see that play out. as you've been writing in the Star. So your next article will be in this weekend. I think. Well, now this podcast is going to be airing on Monday, but you're doing this throughout the tournament, right?
Yes, it's a small batch of 6 weekend columns. This is number 3 or 4. And yeah, I mean, it suits me because I think my friends and family would probably be pissed off at this point because I would just be talking soccer at them all the time. And
grateful.
So you know what went wrong in that game? And then it was like, go write about it. Just go put something on paper and send it to a newspaper.
Exactly. I love, though, you point out this, and I don't know if I got the name right, Ismaili Kone, who was injured in the Canadian game against Qatar. That was sort of a defining moment, and I was amazed, too, watching that game. My God, this horrible injury. He broke his leg, and they're carrying him out on a stretcher, and he sits up and acknowledges the crowd, who go crazy because he literally is thinking of them at that moment, which was very, very uplifting and fun to see.
It was a very powerful moment, visually, emotionally.
Yeah.
And he showed, as I said in my piece for the Star, he showed grace.
Yeah.
Poise. To do that. It also, I think, it illustrated the emotional connection between the team and the supporters, and it brought it gave this men's Canada team a different kind of meaning. Like, these are warriors.
Yeah.
They are guys who get injured and go on and on, and we are used to this in hockey. I mean, hockey has such meaning for us because hockey, as a metaphorical sport, is about survival against the elements. I mean, it is people surviving on the ice. The men's soccer team did not have the same kind of visceral meaning, but because of what happened in that game, I think the sort of aura of hockey's dramatics descended on the men's hockey team, and the crowd knew it. The crowd fed off it. And when the young player who replaced Ismail Kone, when he scored a goal and he went to the sideline and held up Kone's shirt to all corners of the stadium, that had an emotional power. You can't buy that.
No.
You can't direct that. That was such a an instinctive, visual, emotional thing to do.
Yeah, it was beautiful. And I think Canadians, a lot of us are a bit cynical, with injuries on the field. Often 2 guys are going up to head a ball, and the one who heads it successfully keeps playing. The other guy's on the ground rolling around. That there seemed to be, there's a whole strategic thing to those moments in soccer. And I get it. I mean, 90 minutes, you got to be exhausted. You're looking to sort of calm things down in any way you can and gain advantage on the field. But a lot of Canadians are like, oh, come on, that's an injury. Come on,
Well, that, to be realistic, there is a certain amount of theater in soccer. Yeah. And it is especially true of Latin countries where it's part of the culture. You exaggerate. Yeah. There is some acting out. But I think it's foolish to concentrate on that. There are floppers in the NBA. Yeah. There are guys who go down way too easy in the NBA. Yep. There are there's a certain amount of theater in hockey too. The play acting fisticuffs, which is just, nobody's actually getting hit. That's acting. That's
wrestling.
It is. It's silly. Yeah. So
it is silly.
What can happen, especially toward the end of a soccer game, is a player has run 7.2K during the game, and there's like 8 minutes left. First of all, they just want a breather.
Right.
So they will exaggerate an injury to give themselves a breather and strategically for the other players to talk to the coach on the sideline so that he can say, listen, you guys, you two move back, you stay in the middle. And for the last few minutes, that's how you can do it. So it's strategic.
Yeah.
It's not that they are play acting with a purpose.
Right.
And
No.
a strategic purpose to gain an advantage.
I get it. It's a big field and a long game. My thanks once again to John Doyle for finding time in a busy few weeks for a podcast. So read him in the Toronto Star throughout the FIFA World Cup tournament. And come back to this podcast next Monday as we look at the best and worst on TV today. Thanks as always to Phil Hong for ignoring all the red cards and bringing this episode into the group of 16. Kudos to those crispy critters BJ Del Conte, Paul Boudra, and piano man Stephen Dudley for the music heard on this podcast. And finally, thanks to you, listener. If you liked what you heard, please spread the word. I'm Bill Brio. Thanks for listening.